When I was around 14, I lived in a small town with my family in the southern US. I lived here for most of my life and had gotten pretty used to the isolation of ourselves and away from big cities. My house was right in the middle of nowhere, and the nearest supermarket was about 6 miles away. I attended school on the other side of my town, and I'd oftentimes have to take the bus to and from school. It was a hassle, but was the only way I could go to school as both my parents worked. This happened on a weeknight, and is by far one of the most horrifying experiences I've ever had. I was walking to my house back from school after a long day of boredom when my phone dings. I look at it, and it's my friend Dylan telling me that he had found something interesting. Dylan was the type of person in school who would pretty much do anything for attention. So when he told me how he had found an abandoned amusement park a few miles from our school, I was more than intrigued. He gave the idea to go check it out that night and to make a video on it as an exploration. At first, I was skeptical, but seeing as YouTube was only 5 years old at the time, I figured we'd get a lot of views if we did. That being said, I agreed, and he informs his other friends and tells them his plan. That night, I tell my mom the usual, "I'm staying at so-and-so's house," to which she then reluctantly agreed to. I bike on over to Dylan's house, where I was introduced to his two friends, Mike and Dave. Long story short, we bike over to where the destination was, unsure about how it would go. We get there, and in the dead of night, was greeted to a big welcome sign. We all get off our bikes and proceed to walk into the entrance with our flashlights on full power. Dylan recommends we split up to film our own findings, but I told him he was out of his mind if he thought we were doing that. We might have been crazy for doing this, but we weren't that crazy. Dylan and I go into one of the huts of what used to be a fun game room that had now been taken over by leaves and other vegetation. Dylan starts talking about theories as to why this place was abandoned and practically went on a rant about it. I didn't think anything of it and just continued to film. As I was filming my findings, I heard a noise come from near one of the skee-ball games. Looking back, I couldn't describe as to what it was, but imagine dropping a large piece of raw meat onto wood. Yeah, that's close to what I heard. Dylan heard it too, and we both shine our flashlights in the direction of a hallway where we saw what we could only describe as a forehead from down the hall. We both scream and drop our flashlights and book it back to our bikes with our other friends behind. We pedaled back to my house so fast, praying we weren't being followed. We get back to my house, and that's when we obviously got caught. My mom was pissed and had sent my friends home and me to my room. I tried to tell her what we had seen, but she naturally didn't care and grounded me for a month for sneaking out. It's been 12 years now, and I'm now 26 and became a little more wise as to what actually happened. Till this day, I'm not sure who that was or what would have happened if we had stayed, but I don't think I want to know. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I went on a 3-day weekend trip with my niece, who was 8 at the time, to Disney World in Florida. We were going to a wildly popular amusement park called Epcot, which was one of the parks we had never been to. It was a Friday afternoon and school was still in session, meaning that there were a lot less people around. While it might have been strange, it was definitely convenient for my girlfriend and I, as we wouldn't have to wait in lines. When we get through the entrance, one of the rides instantly captures my niece's attention. It was one of those carousel rides on every corner of the park, and I gave her a ticket to go on it. My girlfriend gets out her camera to take pictures of her on the ride having the time of her life. As she was taking pictures and waving, I noticed an older man standing a few feet away taking pictures of the scenery. At first glance, he just looked like a normal visitor with a hat, sunglasses, and even had a map. I figured that maybe he had been a parent as he was taking pictures of the kids on the ride. However, the thing that caught me off guard was that he was looking around anxiously, constantly being aware of his surroundings. Suddenly, that's when I hear someone yell at him to quote, "Give me the damn camera." I then see another man go up to him and attempt to take his camera away. He tried to resist, but security had stepped in, causing attention from other people. The man who had stepped in turned out to be a dad and claimed he had been taking pictures of the children. At that point, security had confiscated his camera and escorted him out of the park. I later found out that he had in fact been taking pictures of children inappropriately. Some of the pictures even being zoomed in, and well, you know the rest. I'm not sure if my niece was in one of the pictures, but I like to think that she wasn't. The rest of our trip went smoothly, other than the fact that I couldn't stop thinking about the incident. This happened when I was about 14 years old on a field trip with my class during the 8th grade. Every year, the 8th graders would take a field trip up to Six Flags, which, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like a Disney World but revolves more around roller coasters. We had taken the long bus ride to the park, and we had made sure we had all our belongings and stuff for the day. One of our teachers, Mr. Diaz, had told us to group up with a few of our classmates, but required us that we'd return to him every 3 hours to make sure everyone was still here. Now, being very socially awkward, I was definitely no popular kid, but I managed to find a few friends and go with them. We'll call them Carlos and Ivan. We hit a few rides here and there, participated in some water activities, and ate at the overpriced food stands where they charged $7 a soda. At around 5 or 6 p.m., we happened to be walking around the park where there weren't many attractions, meaning there weren't really any people around either. This area of the park was mainly used for people to take a stroll through. We sat down at a nearby bench talking to each other when I noticed a man walking towards us. As soon as I made eye contact with the guy, I instantly knew he was coming to us. He walks right up to us and asks us the following. "Hey, I'm part of the management. Can you three boys help me out by helping me load up a few boxes onto my truck?" To give you a better understanding, let me give you a brief description of the guy. He was tall with a medium build and his hair was a mess. At this point, I knew he was lying when he claimed he was from the management, as he wore nothing that resembled an employee. In fact, he really didn't look like anybody who would belong at a park. He wore a stained white shirt with cargo pants, and we could smell the alcohol in his breath. It was obvious by now that this guy was not an employee. We kindly declined, telling him that we couldn't leave the park as we were on a field trip. Nonsense. Come on, guys. It'll only be a minute. Ivan stepped up and said, "Come on, guys. It'll be alright." Seeing as Ivan was a big dude, we figured that if there was a problem, Ivan would know what to do. Needless to say, we followed the guy out into the parking lot to his truck, but we didn't see any boxes. Ivan then stops and tells the man that we had to go back to meet up with our teacher but could come back later. Before the man could say anything, Ivan motions for us to go back, and I could tell that something wasn't right. As soon as we got back into the park, Ivan immediately tells us that as he was approaching that truck, he could see two men in the back seat wearing ski masks. My blood ran cold, and I told him that we had to inform our teacher. Our teacher ended up giving us some criticism, but called over the park security anyway. We were talked to, but they didn't end up finding the man or his truck, as they had no cameras outside of the park. We haven't been back there ever since, and don't plan on going back anytime soon.